So thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm Frank Hovorka. I'm REHVA president. REHVA is a federation of National Association of HVAC engineers and research. And we have as an aim for knowledge dissemination, health, indoor environmental quality, comfort, and energy efficiency according climate change. I'm also involved in real estate development since several years, and I'm working at the Real Estate French Association of Real Estate Developers. So to go with the Aldren projects, we have discussed, and Johan Zundkibel presented the 5 main results of Aldren. So I will go to Mrs. Benhammer. You're there, sorry. As first, because you are a representative of EPRA. EPRA is the European Public Real Estate of Alliance, sorry, yes, my mistake. I just shift from the second line, sorry. So as a property owner and a subsidiary of insurance, I think you are interested in both subjects. Climate change may have an impact on your activities, and as property owner, this discussion about having transparency, data accuracy, what does it mean in your company? If you have to push a button, yeah.
Okay. So I'm head of sustainability for Alliance Real Estate in France. So my scope is the portfolio located in France, and for us, deep renovation, consumption, and reduce the energy and the CO2 emissions is very important. And it's important for the insurance group and for real estate specifically. And we have now we are defining our target, and we are it's important. This group is very important for us, for our tenant, to explain objective in consumption and CO2 emission.
So if I asking directly, does it mean that these indicators, CO2 emissions, energy efficiency, are taken in account in your decision process of investment or retrofit?
Yes, we take in account, but we need more precisely indicator of our deep renovation, because I think we need to have a precisely target, and we need indicators of the creating value, because it's important for our asset when we haven't regulatory requirement. For us, what is important is the creating value.
Or maybe not decreasing value.
Or decrease value.
Yeah,
it could be...
because we have a two sides of a coin,
yes,
green value and
right.
brown discount.
Yes.
So you have to take care about both, I
yes.
think. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benhammer. So I will go to Mrs. Yana Bo from EPRA. Sorry, I just have getting old and I made mistake on my notes. Yana, you're at EPRA, so it's the European Real Estate Association, where I think Alliance is one of the members. Am I right? Alliance.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be correct.
Yes, correct.
I think, according to my records, it is, but I prefer to ask. So, Yana, what does it mean at European level in terms of do you want to have a standardized tool, or on what are you working in data transmission? Because of course the real estate developers, a real estate investor knows the GRESB initiative, which is a global report for sustainability, and I think a lot of investors are using this data set. But is it enough? What do you recommend as Ypres?
Thank you, and also thank you for having me here today. I would just also explain a little bit more about EPRA as an association, because there is a uniqueness in its composition that our members are listed property companies who themselves invest in real estate, and also investors who invest into listed property companies through purchasing the shares, and thus they invest into underlying real estate indirectly. What we do at EPRA in terms of transparency and comparability of data is that we do have two in-house standards. EPRA best practice recommendation for financial disclosure of listed property companies, but also non-financial disclosure, which would be named sustainability best practice recommendation. This is to add on the transparency and increase the comparability of the data that our listed property companies disclose annually. And by having investors who invest into listed property companies, we can enable also the dialogue between them and the property companies to understand what is needed in terms of data provision, what can be improved, and this is perfect platform at EPRA that we can do.
So you said that you have a platform of common definition for data, am I right?
Yes.
For non-financial data, I think?
Yes, we do have a standard which set recommendation on what can be disclosed. But of course, listed property companies then decide for themselves,
if
depending on the materiality for their particular business.
And do you think that it will be needed to go forward in disclosure? Do you feel this demand, or it is?
Absolutely, and I believe that also as part of the Green Deal, there will be a work on non-financial information directive, which is planned, so that will help looking into non-financial information that companies do provide annually. I need to say that most of our members are not within its scope, so they do it voluntarily.
So you want to have it mandatory?
No.
Because you
I
can
would encourage
ask
you
to
that there is an appetite from both sides to provide those data.
Okay. So, well, Dirk, you are representing the building professionals in a broad sense, if I may say that. Are you aware about this EPRA perimeter of disclosure? Because inside this non-financial information, there is some technical data about the building.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you also, Mrs. Novak, for this invitation and for having the European Engineers Federation here invited this afternoon. Clearly, representing 6 million engineers in Europe and being aware that there are, according to the database of the European Commission on Professional Qualifications, 38 different engineering disciplines. We have also other subjects on our plate than merely renovation of buildings, digitalization and artificial intelligence being priorities for the moment. But we are aware of these ambitions from the European institutions, and more in particular the concern why renovation in the building sectors are below target, despite the very ambitious goals and objectives set out to have reductions by 50, or is it 55%? And I was asked here, I believe, to give an overview why, or an idea why we believe what could be the reasons for this slow progress. And having taken an analytical approach to trying to answer that question, I have looked a bit at the value chain and the family of stakeholders involved with building renovation. And I have identified 4 particular groups without having the aspiration of being complete. But I think one of the reasons for the fact that we are below target has to do, first of all, with the scientists and the researchers. There is an overall tendency that findings are very hesitantly translated into applications. And we are not here talking about architecture, we are talking about building technology. And so one of the concerns and one of the reasons, in my opinion, is the rather slow flow of expertise, which is inadequate to meet targets for the moment. The second stakeholder group, which I believe has a certain responsibility in the fact that we are not meeting targets, has to do with the property owners who are not sufficiently motivated. And that has to do with their cheap access they have still to fossil fuels, and for which they do not necessarily see an immediate incentive to move to more thermal insulation or alternatives. Because those fossil fuels, they can very often invoice directly in the rental fees, be it part of the rental fee or afterwards, whereas an investment in alternative sources would not be, at least not in the short term, yield financial benefits for them. And the other thing is that they are also probably not very well aware of all the possibilities that exist in terms of renovations and in making their buildings more modern. The third group of stakeholders that I see who carry a responsibility in the slow movement are architects and the building service planners. Architects are often artists, but if you're real, you don't go to the pharmacist, you first go to the doctor and you ask for a prescription to get the right medication. In the building sector, it is also such that if you want to do renovation, you work with a planner. That could be a civil engineer, that can be an architect, could be anybody, who is actually acting as a trustee of the owner. He will be the one who does take care of the detailed planning, who takes responsibility in finding the subcontractors, who performs the tenders, who checks the warranties, who will control the invoices, and so on. He is actually the one who is managing the construction site and take responsibility for that. Now, architects and these service planners have an overall tendency not to be very good in acquisitions. They are not very good canvassers. I've never met an architect who came to my house or my building saying, listen, you don't have double glass. Would it be an option? It will save you money in the future. They are not proactive. They do not enter in the market. It's one of the reasons why we are below targets. So they're waiting for the customers, virtually like doctors, waiting for the patients to come in. And so this lack of acquisition may be equally one of the reasons. By definition, if you use the word it means you have to redo something which was previously not properly done. Whether it's a re-examination or a report, which is a written rehearsal of what was said previously verbally, renovation and renewal, refurbishment, by definition, are not very sexy. Architects and planners rather do something new completely or do something which they know already before, have done before. So if they have the expertise of doing something, they would rather repeat it rather than renovate, because renovation and refurbishment implies corrections to something which was not done properly. Maybe it was done properly at the time, but currently it's no longer being assessed as appropriate. So renovations and refurbishments are also, in addition, very complicated. And it's not an easy job to do. especially not with existing buildings. So they are terribly complicated. And the fourth group, next to the scientists and the researchers, the property owners, the architects and the planners, are actually the people carrying out the work. As I said, the planners take ownership of the building, and if you have gone through, be it privately or corporately, through a renovation or a refurbishment, you will know that that is not fun. Any renovation is an imposition, it's an impediment, and you need to be aware that while doing the renovation or the refurbishment, you still need to respect the operation of the building or the mission for which the building was initially set up. The building needs to continue to be in operation, whether it's a hospital or a school, it could be a private house, or a hotel, it still needs to go on. And having renovations and refurbishing going on while you're still conducting your business is not a pleasure, is not fun. So the challenge is to design the renovation work in such a way that it still enables operations to continue at an acceptable level. Any one of you, and I'm sure it's not only a private experience, I had in my home a couple of years ago, due to very low temperatures here in Belgium, a water tube which had burst, and I needed to call in refurbishers while it was repaired. I needed to wait 2.5 weeks before they came. I wondered also why it was so slow, but anyway, they came along anyway. And it took 3 days, and I can tell you in the real sense of the word, these people, the construction workers, they do take ownership of your house. I didn't know where to hide in my house just to avoid these people. They do drilling, they do shuffling, and it's annoying, it's operating. Whereas it's strange because they're actually improving your house, they're improving your quality of your building. But this is perception. And so by nature, I would say, wherever is a change, you have a resistance, human resistance. So I think those are a number of reasons why we are still below target. It's not merely a matter of money. I do not believe it's a matter of money. It's not a matter of being or of having inadequate legislation. I believe those factors, as I have just mentioned, play a part in being below target, and I think those need to be taken into consideration when you formulate such ambitious plans. So that is what I wanted to contribute in terms of renovation rate being a bit below expectations.
Thank you very much, Dirk. So if I will copy a speech of someone which was known, we will use the Green Deal as a target, and we will not do it because it's easy, but we will do it because it's impossible to be done, and people before told us it could be done. We will do it not because it's easy, but we will do it because it's complicated, and we will do it because we need to achieve something that we are expected to achieve. And I will, in doing that, I'm copying the speech of President Kennedy to go to the moon. So I propose to use the Green Deal to go to energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction, and we will not do it because it's easy. So, if I listen to you, Dirk, we can switch around and use all your comments that I agree with and say, well, this is the target we have. And then I'm going to our colleagues, Hélène, or if you want to go on that, deep renovation. How do we make it attractive? How do we work on transparency, confidence to make it attractive?
Okay, to make it attractive, let's call me Valérie
Oh,
and not Hélène. I feel more comfortable.
I'm really sorry today. I'm
problem.
really mismatching the names.
It's
sorry.
a complicated matter. To make it really work, it's not only about deep renovation, which is part of a picture, but the broader picture must encompass also energy management services. First, because it keeps the performance over time. Second, because if you do not only deep renovation but staged deep renovation, it helps fund next actions on the basis of first savings that you take the advantage of. Third, because on a case-by-case basis, because we know it's a complex word and it's a complex series of action, it's better to choose the right combination of actions. Sometimes it can be deep renovation, sometimes it's not the adequate time for making deep renovation, but it's going to be later. Sometimes you have to combine on the basis of your capability to invest several kinds of actions, including the possibility to have energy efficiency services. So we see the Green Deal as a great opportunity to, again, put clear in the program that modernizing the buildings means renovate them and have a series of complementary or sometimes alternative actions.
But in that case, how do we avoid the locking effect? How do we keep the tracks on what was done? And how are we sure that the first steps of renovation are not killing the savings for the next steps?
True. So
Building passport?
building passport can be, building passport is a final instrument. It's not the passport, the instrument that will prevent from lock-in effects. So first you have to say in the legislative instruments and in the programs that you should avoid lock-in effects. I mean, just say it clearly. But just managing the energy efficiency of the building has no lock-in effect. It's a day-to-day perspective and action that brings results without having lock-in effects. Lock-in effects is if you have investments. So if you do staged deep renovation, you have to organize the different steps in a way that make no lock-in effects. But usually if you organize that in an intelligent and clever way, there is no lock-in effect. It's just a phasing way of thinking things. You phase things. But you have to clearly distinguish low-hanging fruits, which is bad, from intelligent, staged, or separate actions combined.
Okay. And from ROA's perspective, or do you think also that the deep renovation is a matter of fact that we have to reinforce building passports only a last tool? And you see, do you share the vision, or do you have some comments on it?
Yes, I would just maybe start with presenting Ypres for those who don't know us in the room. I represent the European Alliance of Companies for Energy Efficiency in Buildings. We are in business association. Our members are manufacturers of energy efficiency products and services. Our specificity is that we represent all technologies present in energy efficient buildings. So we are representing heating and cooling equipment, installation, lighting, maintenance regimes and controls, ventilation and windows. So we have really a holistic approach to energy renovation of buildings. Then to respond to the question about deep renovation, of course for us we totally agree that to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, you have to tackle the building sector. And we have now in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which was adopted and is about to be transposed by member states in March, actually. This objective of a highly energy efficient and decarbonized stock by 2050, for us it means nearly zero energy standard. So considering the current state of the building stock today, which is very poor, we know that 97% of the buildings have to be renovated. Considering the low renovation rate at the moment, we had a commission study coming out at the end of last year, which showed that the renovation rate on average in the EU is about 1%. But also for us, it's worrying that the renovation done are mostly shallow renovation, very light renovations. If you look at this very study, It shows that less than 0.3% of the total floor area in the EU is deeply renovated each year. It's very, very low. So if we want to achieve climate neutrality, if we know that the energy saving potential lies in the buildings, of course we have to do deep renovation. And for us, indeed, the building renovation passport is one of the tools to help people to be accompanied, because if you have a vision for the entire building stock, it's also good to have a vision for your own buildings, and the passport is the translation of that vision at an individual building level.
So we spoke about the building passport and how to look at the renovation rate and the path. Loïs, you are in charge of the Observatoire de l'immobilier durable, so sustainable real estate in France. We are in France, because I'm also French, sorry for that. We are in the middle of a discussion for a new regulation on a mandatory retrofit on non-residential buildings. So, Loïs, what is your vision? Do you think that we can have an effect, a push and pull effect, with a regulation that push forward and a market that can pull this idea of renovation, avoiding light renovation, as you said?
Yeah. Hello, thanks for the invitation. First of all, I would just introduce our organization. OID is a non-profit organization, independent, and it is gathering most of the French real estate investors. We operate database since 10 years on real energy consumptions, non-real estate buildings. So we have a clear view of what is making earnings in matters of energy efficiency and what doesn't work. Regarding to this and the new regulations that Mark Frank was talking about.
It's a day where we will all mismatch, but thank you for helping me.
Okay, so we had a long process since 10 years for establishing a regulation which focus is to reduce by 40% the real energy consumptions of the of the commercial buildings in France, all that are more over than 1,000 square meters. So this regulation is contributing to the French objective to be carbon neutral in 2050. This is a contribution of the non-residential buildings. So this is 40% by 2030, 50% by 2040, and 60% by 2050. I think first of all, what is important to say is that during the process, the French government understands that for non-residential buildings, renovation is not all. And especially, you need to focus, first of all, on use, secondly, on maintenance and operations, and then on renovation. Especially because the renovations are what costs the more. And if you unzoom on the impact greenhouse gases of the real estate sector, you will notice that construction emission weight is as much as important than the energy use. I mean, when you build the buildings, the cost of emission is the same than 50 years of use of these buildings. So I mean, pushing new construction or pushing too much renovation can be, with a global overview, diminishing the effect. So this is important to say. So about this regulation, this French regulation, today you have what are the issues? Firstly, to have an annually reporting on energy data, real data, not theoretical, but real data, first of all. Secondly, to establish objectives for each kind of property types. I mean, offices, logistics, public buildings, etc. And the main issues then are to manage relationships between owners and users of the buildings that don't have the same goals. This is, I think, this is a good regulation because it will push during these next years almost all of the French market to reduce the consumption, or at least to try. Secondly, this regulation helps the government to set objectives for each property types. And thirdly, this regulation understand that if we want to match energy efficiency objectives, we need to use the three tools uses, and it's individual what we do in the building, if we open the window or no, operating and maintenance and renovation, the three. And I can ensure you we have a database which is 5% of the non-residential buildings in France. We have 50 million square meters in the database with annual real data, and we have make statistics on building renovated and building non-renovated, and we really know that we cannot match the 21st objectives only with renovation. So for me, it's really important to replace the debate about this.
Thank you, Lois.